Delighted to be joined by no relation, Paul Lambert, who is CEO of New Change FX. Paul, nice to see you on the Unfiltered video series. Hope things are well.
Nice to see you, Colin, too. Yep, you've certainly got a better tan than me at the moment, so nice to see you looking so well.
It could be because I'm in a very darkened room in Kuala Lumpur. You never know, do you? Paul, I wanted to talk to you because an area of growing interest in foreign exchange markets after about a decade of somnolence is FX swaps and the interest rate curve changing. You have done a lot of work on the forwards in FX in terms of producing data for your client base, etc. Why did you sort of build this? What drove the the decision to actually really build out this forward curve?
Yeah, so I spent 20 years managing money at some of the biggest asset management companies in the world, and the biggest, largest, the number of transactions that we did in terms of volume and amounts was swap trades. And it was always clear to me that we had very poor data on swaps trades. So we were, rolling our trades quite often in the dark. And that seemed to me like, problematic. Now, I was sort of old enough to be around that I was there when there were sort of interest rates that were non-zero. And then, of course, there was a long period where interest rates became zero and everyone stopped worrying about it because we were effectively rolling along curves that were flat and close to zero. But we knew that it wasn't going to stay like that forever. And we knew from experience that once interest rates started to change again, then actually having granularity was going to become incredibly important. And actually, we also knew that other things happen in the swaps curve that are also important and that people also need to be aware of if they're going to do their jobs as well as they can do them when it comes to rolling their forwards or, positioning.
Yeah. And I suppose especially because you look at corporates, they like to hedge to a certain date as well. So it probably would help in that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and the way those dates are often chosen with no reference to what the price is, was really a reflection of the fact that people didn't know what the price was until they went there. And of course, you wouldn't do that in any other market. You wouldn't make a decision completely in the dark about where the price is.
Well, at least we'd hope not anyway.
No, we'd hope not, yeah.
Yeah. Now it strikes me then the work has paid off because I've become aware from a couple of sources of a regulatory change that happened in Europe that has actually really started affecting what's happening in the forward curve. And this kind of speaks to exactly what you've been building the forward curve, the data for. Can you explain what that regulatory change was and the impact it's had on the curve?
Sure. So the ECB decided in February, I think it was, to change the regulation around not paying interest on excess reserves. Now, what that meant was that banks didn't want to hold excess reserves over the reporting period, so month ends, quarter ends, year ends, because they were going to, receive no interest on that. And of course, now, the amount of interest you can receive on your deposits is significant, and that becomes a significant issue. And so those banks, sensibly and correctly, were pricing a premium into holding dollars over those periods and not holding euros. So the result is that on those dates, the curve contains a turn effect. So there's a discount in terms of what you'll receive for dollars and a premium, discounting what you'll receive for euros and a premium in terms of what you'll receive for dollars. And you can see that in the points per day if you've got that granular picture of the curve.
Yeah. And this is kind of exacerbated an existing condition, hasn't it? Because obviously we've seen a few issues in recent years around quarter end or year end demand for dollars. And now the ECB has thrown another aspect into it, hasn't it?
So absolutely. So they've thrown something into it. Year end, turns have been known about. But again, the amount of data available to people making decisions on that has been very poor. Now, the fact, that there is a year end turn, people can some people like we talk to say, oh, well, we we go beyond it or we come before it. But actually, that means there's some point in the middle of your role which is extremely volatile.
Yeah.
And you can either take advantage of that, or you can avoid it, depending which way around you are. But if you just don't know what it is,
Yeah.
it's just, it becomes something that you can't manage correctly, properly, professionally.
Yeah. And especially as say these impacts are becoming slightly bigger because we now live in a non-zero interest rate world.
Yeah, the impacts are significant. I mean, even at the end of this month, the turn in euro dollars is between 25 and 30 basis points. It's
Yeah.
not, we're not talking tiny numbers. We're talking significant numbers in the world's most liquid contract.
Yeah. And what the highest volume?
Highest volume, exactly. People are doing trillions of dollars of these transactions and don't have proper data. It's
Yeah.
we just don't think it's sustainable to
And
do
I
that.
guess then that's why, I mean, if I asked you the question, why is this important? The first thing would be exactly what you just said there. But it's really a question of actually is it also a question of educating clients in how to use the data?
Yeah, I think educating them, giving them tools, actually working with them. I think one of the most enjoyable things we've done with some of our new clients for this data has been understanding their use cases and then building with them in partnership the tools they need to make best use of them. For some of our other clients on the other side of the street, actually what they need is better data on basis if they're not a market maker in particular, just keeping track of that basis right along the curve, which is something else that we're able to do with our data. So actually what we're trying to do really is bring increased transparency to suppress the sort of asymmetry of information between the two sides of the street and allow the market to act and behave more efficiently. So sometimes people are making decisions which aren't in their best interest. Sometimes they could be offering liquidity to someone who's on the other side of the trade. So actually, it's just about bringing greater transparency and efficiency to the whole market.
So, and then therefore that would that be the main use case here? I mean, I'm interested in how a client could perhaps get some opportunities out of this. You mentioned about, oh, you might be able to find someone else to trade with. Is this actually a question of it enables them to actually change their trading strategy?
I think actually we've been pleasantly surprised by the fact that every part of the market actually is finding a use for our data. So we've got buy side clients who have been frankly rolling in the dark, as it were, and and now they can do it with greater clarity of knowing what they're doing, how to do it. They can keep track of data, they can keep track of turns, how they're moving through time. Are they moving against them, or are they moving in their favor? And they can time their movements. The year end turn, for example, typically peak 6 weeks before year end. By the time you get to the year end, it's largely dissipated. So if you need to roll through that, you can take advantage of that movement if you've got that data. But actually, on the sell side, we've seen lots of banks taking advantage of the data that's putting in place guide rails for their electronic pricing. That's good for both sides of the street because they can keep prices live for longer, which means that actually the buy side can then take those prices for longer without having to go to a sort of renew a quote, which means that they can then automate more of their process and increase their efficiency. So, there's winners on both sides of the street from this data. Just, shining a light for everybody on what's going on is just helping everybody, we hope.
And I think, I mean, what I would say on that is that there was a paper a few years ago by the BIS that actually highlighted the quarter end turn in particular, the regulatory impact of window dressing around Basel in particular, that actually meant that a lot of the bigger LPs weren't actually in the market around quarter ends. They were looking to smaller players, maybe with better balance sheets, but more balance sheet room at quarter ends. But they weren't sure how to be pricing this. And I guess that kind of meets that challenge, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So, exactly. There are quite a lot of players out there that have either got the balance sheet or actually just naturally the other way around, but they don't play these events because they feel like they're not informed enough, and so they just avoid them because it's a dark room. But if you sort of shine a light on what's going on, then they can come and join the party and actually offer liquidity and provide a better, more efficient outcome for everybody.
And I guess then, just to close out, Paul, I guess then that what this means is for those clients that they can actually now perhaps trade their forwards and their rolls in a similar fashion to the way they do their spot. Actually take a little bit more, pay a little bit more attention to their market impact, their cost of execution across the whole trade, not just the spot.
Because people knew that the transaction cost analysis was poor because it was measured against the wrong data, because it was straight lined data between the standard tenors. So they weren't getting measured properly anyway on their forward transactions. They were often picking their dates just because it didn't have a holiday and it was the middle of the month. And they weren't looking at the shape of the curve because they couldn't see the shape of the curve because on the data that they were looking at, it was a straight line. So if you got to pick a point on a straight line, then you don't care which point you pick. But if it's not a straight line, then you care, right? You make an optimal choice. And these were, and these are trillions and trillions of dollars of transactions that have been taking place like this. So it was crying out for change, and also automation really needs good data, because you need checks and balances in the system, and without checks and balances, then you can't automate with confidence. And so again, this allows you to do that. So we're hoping that this will really help this market, improve and in lots of different ways.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, it's thrown a light on a relatively recent issue in the last 4 months with the ECB that many people weren't aware of.
Absolutely.
And I guess that highlights the benefit of data.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a issue that's impacting almost every trade that you do and you don't know about it, then you probably ought to know about it. And so yes, so shining a light on the fact that you need to take more care with your forwards and you need to know what's going on, I think is a good thing. Yeah,
I've heard it's helpful.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, Paul, thank you so much for sharing your time with us on this. I do think it's an issue that kind of is just now coming to the forefront, and hopefully, we can help get the message out more that there's a lot happening on the curve that perhaps a whole generation of traders wouldn't be aware of.
Absolutely. Yeah. There has to be some benefits to age, Colin, and maybe this is one of them.
Yeah. Oh, we can tick that one off. Thank goodness for that. Paul, great to speak to you as ever. Thanks for joining us. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back again very soon. Getting the recording in.